Hi, I'm Xenowave, and today I'm going to talk about speeding up your workflow in FL Studio using hotkeys. This should be handy for FL users at any experience level. When writing music in FL Studio, your time is usually spent cycling between the playlist, the channel rack, the piano roll, and the mixer. Throughout the years, I've developed habits that have greatly sped up my workflow, and I'm going to show which shortcuts really help me improve. By the way, stick around for bonus workflow tips when it comes to automation and graph editors. I'll be using this snippet of a work in progress I decided to convert into chiptune because my computer can't handle playing the actual project and recording this video. So here it is. So first, let's pull up the list of hotkeys using our HTML notebook. So open up the mixer, go to any mixer track, pick Fruity HTML notebook, and I'm gonna put this over to the side. Oh yeah, let's detach this so that when we click off of it, it doesn't go away. I'm gonna put this over here. Click on the title, and then go to Google, and then in Google we type in FL Studio hotkeys. It already knows because it's already collected cookies on me because of how many takes I've taken to get this recorded. Anyway, if you click on the first link, and here are most of the FL Studio hotkeys. So if you're learning, you want to learn your way around FL Studio, this is basically your main cheat sheet. Yeah, that's a lot. That is a lot. But yeah, this is like your bread and butter for reference. As for the rest of the hotkeys for FL Studio, we find them by usually looking at the hint bar or in drop-down menus. So we'll go over that soon. I'm going to close this out because I won't really be using it. But when you're learning it, definitely use this. It's amazing, for lack of a better term. It's the bee's knees. All right, now that we've gone over the cheat sheet, let's go over how we can use the hint bar and the drop-down menus to find even more shortcuts. So the hint bar is this section over here, and it just gives you information on whatever your mouse is hovering over. So if I want to find a shortcut for opening the mixer, instead of having to click it, go up and click it like that, all I gotta do is look at the hint bar and I see F9. So I know that F9 is my button to quickly open up the mixer. That's it for the hint bar, really. So in drop-down menus, there's two things to keep an eye out for. It's underlined letters and the hotkeys themselves. So basically, if you press the key that's underlined, it'll do that function. So I see that the R in renaming color is underlined. If I press R, it'll take me to the rename prompt, and I can just rename it as needed. So I can speed it up by doing that, because I don't need to click on the drop down and go all the way down and click it. I could just press the underline letter and it'll do that. So let's try make unique. And just like that, it's made unique because I clicked on the drop down, and as soon as that was open, I press M and it's made unique. No problem. And I know in some drop down menus there are hotkeys on the side, like in the mixer. So instead of having to right click on this mixer track, press R or have to click on it, I could just select this mixer track and press F2 because that's the hotkey that's on the side. Or if I want to open up Edison, I don't need to, right click and click. You get the point. I can just press Control E and I have Edison open, no problem. And that's really it for navigating drop-down menus and other things. So yeah, in short, just keep an eye out for underlined letters, hotkeys on the side of drop-down menus, and just keep your eye on the hint bar as well. And hopefully you should see a speed up in your workflow if you're not used to this already, that is. All right, so now let's go over some basic shortcuts for FL Studio. Press Ctrl S to save. Press Escape to quickly X out of whatever window you're in, like that. Press Tab to cycle through all windows that are open. So let's open up a few windows, and you can press Tab to cycle through them like so. Press Ctrl Z to redo the last thing you did. So let's, I don't know, place these. So, and if I press Ctrl Z, it'll take that away. And I just had this little cycle. But if I press Ctrl Alt and Z, I'll just undo the things I just did, like that. I can press Ctrl Z to redo them. So if you actually hover over, like around here, you look at the hint bar, you'll see your undo history. So let's take this away. Press F1 to open the manual of whatever you're hovering over. So if I want to learn how to use the playlist some more, I just press F1 and the manual will open up. Or if I want to learn how to use the mixer, hover over it, press F1, and here I can start reading about the mixer. Or let's say I want to learn a certain plugin, I hover over it, press F1, and the list goes on and on. Press F2 to rename or recolor the last thing you selected. So if I want to rename this, I just click on it and press F2 and I can do my thing. And if you press F2 again, it'll randomly select the color. So let's just do that a few times. And there's that. You can do the same thing for stuff in the channel rack and mixer. So if I want to rename this harmor, I have to click on it and I press F2 and I can name it whatever I want. Or if I'm in the mixer and I want to rename a plugin, let's just open up an EQ. I'm allowed to do that as well. And there it is. Press F3 to open up a list of tools and options depending on whatever window you're in. So in a playlist, this pops up when I press F3, and I can pick whatever tool I want or whatever function I want, and so on. In the channel rack, if I press F3, the file drop-down will pop up, and I can use my keyboard to navigate that as needed and go from there. You get the idea. And the piano roll, so let's pick this for example. If I press F3, I can pick the piano roll tools and other options for the piano roll. And in the mixer, if I press F3, I get the options for whatever the mixer has to offer, and so on. Press F4 to create a new pattern, and you can make your title. And you can press F2 to recolor it, and then press Enter to confirm. If you press Escape, it'll just be that pattern number, and there's your pattern right there. Press F5 to toggle the playlist, like that. Also, if you happen to see a plus Q with whatever shortcut I'm saying, please disregard it. It's just OBS being a little silly. Press F6 to toggle the channel rack. Press F7 to toggle the piano roll of whatever instrument is selected in the channel rack in some pattern. So if I click on this pattern and I press F7, it looks like the lead was the one that was already selected. So if I click baseline, for example, in the channel rack, I should just get the baseline information. And I did. Press F8 to open up the plugin picker. The plugins on the right are mixer effects, and the plugins on the left are generators. So let's select the generator. So we get it, and it will appear at the bottom of your channel rack. So I'll get rid of that. Open up again. If we select an effect, it will appear in your currently selected mixer track. So in this case, I had my lead selected, and that's where it appeared. Oops. And also, press it again. As soon as this is loaded, we can start searching for certain plugins. I press enter and I have no idea what's happening now. Oh, wow. Wow. Hold on. I guess it took a second to load a faceplant. Wow. Okay. But yeah, that's the plugin picker. Press F9 to toggle the mixer. Press F10 to toggle the MIDI section of the settings. Press F11 to toggle the info section of the settings. Press F12 to close every plugin and window. So for example, if I have a lot of things going on, pressing F12 will just get rid of all of that. And after pressing F12, I just open up the playlist again with F5 and get back to doing work. Or, whatever I want to do. So now let's go over how we can speed up our workflow inside of the playlist. Quick side note, I do have typing keyboard to piano keyboard turned on, which allows me to play notes on my keyboard. And if we turn this off, we can actually easier access the different sorts of tools over here. Because if we look at the hint bar, we can see if I press P, I get the pencil tool. If I press B, I get the brush tool. D, I get the delete tool, and so on. But I can't play my notes. So I keep this on because there are other shortcuts for these, like that. So we'll get into that. First off, press Shift and P to select the draw tool. And if you hold Shift, click and drag, you can brush along whatever pattern you have selected. Press Shift and B to select the brush tool, which allows you to brush in patterns with just a click and drag. No holding Shift like in the pencil tool or draw tool. Press Shift and D to select the delete tool, which allows you to just delete things with the left click. But honestly, I'm mostly using the pencil tool, so I just right click. It's much easier. Hold right alt and left click and drag to mute something in the playlist. So now if I play this, we're just going to get the kick and snare. And to unmute, you just do the same thing. Right alt, click, and drag. Oh, one thing to note, if you do it for automations, you have to do it on this bar where like the title is, because it won't work for the automation. It's a totally different part of the clip, I guess. Press Shift and S to select the slip tool, which allows you to change the starting position of something in the playlist. So you just click on a pattern, audio clip, or automation clip, and you're able to do whatever you want with that. It's extremely handy for a lot of things, and I'll get into that later. Let me unmute this. One thing to keep in mind when using the slip tool is that when you resize something, it still changes the starting position. So I don't think that's clear with that. Let's use this. If I were to shrink this down, that would happen. Versus if I were to use the pencil tool, the starting position is unchanged. So this is something to keep in mind. Press Alt and C to select the slice tool, And this allows you to slice whatever's in the playlist, like so. If you don't want any sort of diagonal slices like that, you can just hold left shift and you can get even vertical slices all across the board. And another thing to note is actually when you have the pencil tool, subtool, brush, basically anything except for select and zoom, you can just press right shift and left click and you're able to do the same thing. It locks in place and everything. It's awesome. Press shift and E to select the select tool, and this just allows you to select things as needed. Highlight, and you can go back to pencil and drag them as needed. But if you're already in pencil, I just hold control and left click and I drag, and it's the same old tool. Press shift and Z to select the zoom tool, and when you left click and drag, just like the select tool, it will just zoom in whatever box you make, like that. And also like the select tool, if you go back to the draw tool, if you hold control and right click, you get the same old tool. And you can zoom in like this. Press shift and Y to select the playback tool, and whenever you click and hold on something in a playlist, it'll just play it back at whatever bar you are at. So if I want to play Melody 1 at bar 5, I just click around there. And it plays. Alright, so those are the playlist tools. Now let's get into some hotkeys and shortcuts that really streamline the workflow. So first off, when you click on something, you can move it freely, but if you hold shift, you can only move it horizontally, or if you hold control, you can only move it vertically. In general, if you see lights like these, you can usually turn it off with the left click or solo it with the right click. Press Ctrl and A to select everything in the playlist. If you click and hold on something and hold left alt, you can drag without snapping to the grid, as opposed to that. You can merge two or more patterns together with Ctrl and G, but first you have to select them. So I'm just going to press my Control and click and highlight as needed. I'm just going to merge these patterns together with Control G. And here they are. If you right click and drag on the black bar with the measure numbers, you can highlight and loop a section. So, and you can double click to delete it, or if you highlight it, you can hold left shift, click and drag to move whatever loop section you have, or you can press Ctrl and D to delete it. Whenever you have something selected, if you press Ctrl B, it will duplicate immediately over to the right. And you can hold this as well. So that's always fun. And another thing is, if you loop a section and you have empty space, it will also loop or duplicate that space over, like that. So you should just keep that in mind, because you could accidentally like highlight this section and it'll loop over like that, and you meant to have it like this. So just bear that in mind. Press left alt and T to place a marker wherever the playhead is at, and you can just label it as needed. And also, just keep in mind that there's a huge difference between left alt and right alt shortcuts or hotkeys, because if I press right alt and T, I get the mute tool, and I can just do that again. Let's take these off again. With something selected, you can press Ctrl C to copy and Ctrl V to paste it somewhere. But if you bring your playhead into view, it will just paste at whatever measure you place it at, like that, or like that. Very nice. And also, I know you've seen me do it a lot, but just to be clear, to navigate freely throughout the playlist, I right-click on this horizontal bar, and I move up on my mouse to zoom in, and I move down to zoom out, and I move left and right to move left and right. And another thing is, we have this as well, which allows us to zoom in vertically. And if you don't like that, you can just middle click to reset it, and we're all good. And those are all the shortcuts I know that help me streamline my playlist workflow. If you want to learn any more, just press F3 and explore these drop-down menus because they have a lot of shortcuts that I didn't go over. So yeah. So now let's work on channel rack and sequencer workflow. All right, so first off, just to be extra clear, the channel rack is what we use to write our beats or notes in. So I'm going to actually start a new pattern for the sake of clarity. And I'm going to just solo this, expand this, and loop it. And I'm just going to press F6 again. You can see which pattern is selected by looking at this little pattern selector. So if I click Medley 2, it's going to click on that pattern. And if I click on my new stuff pattern, it's going to have that. So let's get to it. So first off, left click to insert beats, and you can right click to delete them as needed. And keep in mind that each group of 4 of these ticks is just a quarter note, which means that each tick is a 16th note. So 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and yeah, let's get started. Let's make a quick pattern. Oh yeah, it's playing in the song. If you click up here and press pat, you'll play it in the pattern only. And I'm just gonna keep doing that. Right, so let's say we have a pattern and we want to shift it over by a 16th note. If you press Control and Shift and left or right arrow, you can shift it over by 1/16th note and basically displace a rhythm. Press Control and C to copy your selected channel's MIDI information, and you can select the different channel and just press Control V to paste it. On top of that, you can just press Control X to cut and Control V to paste as needed. Press the up or down arrows to just change which channel selected. If you hold left Alt and press the up or down arrow, you can change which line your channel is on. Double click on the channel selector to select all channels, or you can just click and drag from a channel, or you can just right click to individually pick a channel. This is especially handy for moving multiple channels at once, like so. If you want to add a new channel, you can click on this plus button down here and pick a plugin, or you can right click on any of these channels, go to Insert, and pick a plugin. There's all these other shortcuts as well, like fill each 2 steps. If I press 2, I get my eighth notes. If I press 4, I get my quarter notes, and so on. So again, I can't emphasize this enough. Explore all these drop-down menus. And over here we have our channel volume and our channel panning and our mute or solo button. So we can right click, export this drop-down. We can solo that if we want to, and unsolo it. Also, before I forget, if you right click on any of these mixer tracks, it works the same way. So for example, if I want to route this 3x OSC to the same mixer track as the chiptune snare, all I have to do is just copy and paste this value into the 3x, and it's right there. Also, I don't think I said this before actually, if you middle click on any parameter, that has been changed, it will reset it to its default. And that's all I have for the channel rack workflow. If you want to learn more, click on this arrow in the top left corner of the window and learn from these menus and explore all these other options as well. So now let's get into the piano roll. So I'm actually just going to delete this and just click on my lead, and we can either press F7 or just right click and select piano roll. Doesn't matter. And we're here. So the piano roll is where you write down your chord progressions, bass lines, melodies, etc. So the piano roll workflow is a lot like the playlist workflow because it uses a lot of the same tools and shortcuts. So let's focus on the tools first. We still press Shift and P to select the draw tool, and we left click to insert a note, and we right click to delete it. Also, if we hold left shift, click, and drag, we can size the note as we place it. Or if we hold right shift, click, and drag, we still have our slice tool. We still press Shift and B to select the brush tool, and we can brush along only horizontally. But if we hold left shift and brush along, we can do it both horizontally and vertically, like so. We press right Alt and N to select the other brush tool, which just allows us to paint 16th notes easily. And that's really it, or that's all I've found out about it. We press right Alt and D to select the delete tool. Press right Alt and T to select the mute tool, or we can also just press right Alt and click on over a note. I'll bring this out. We can just do this. Doesn't matter. Press right Alt and C to select the slice tool, and it works as usual. So we can either slice like this or hold left shift and slice evenly like that. Press Shift and E to select the select tool, and this just works as usual. Or if you're in pencil mode, you can just press Control, click, and drag for the same effect. Press Shift Z to select the zoom tool, and it works exactly as you'd expect it to. Press Shift Y to select the playback tool. So let's get a note out. And it just works exactly as it does in the playlist. Just like that. So those were the piano roll tools. For the rest of the piano roll shortcuts, I'm just going to turn the volume down so I don't have to talk over the note as I'm demonstrating. Holding Shift while dragging still locks things horizontally. Holding Control while dragging still locks things vertically. Control A selects all, just like in the playlist. Holding left Alt while dragging allows you to drag without snap still. And if you hold Shift as well, you're able to horizontally lock. This also works in the playlist. You can press Control G to merge the notes together. You just have to make sure that they're right next to each other. Just like that. Press Control B to duplicate. It works exactly as it does in the playlist. So the navigation options in the piano roll are the same as the playlist. We can right click on this bar to zoom in and move left and right as needed. We can right click and drag on the measures to highlight, and we can shift left click drag to move that around. We can Control D to get rid of it. And we have our horizontal zoom as well, and we can still middle click to default that. Like most things, we can still copy and paste with Control C, Control V, and we can cut and paste with Control X, Control V as well. Press Shift S to switch to a slide note. So I'm going to lay this down, turn the volume back on. So basically what happens is it goes from the regular note to the slide note for how long the slide note is. So just listen. Just like that. So I'm just going to Shift S to toggle off the slide note, get rid of this, and we press right Alt and O to toggle the portamento note. And basically it just slides to the portamento note from the regular note, like so. Keep in mind that portamento and slide notes do not work for third-party plugins, they only work for native FL plugins. So for this next one, I'm just going to move over to one of the melodies over here. I feel like it's best in this context. So if you hold control and select a piano note, it will select every instance of that note in the whole pattern. Like that. And you can also highlight more if you just drag up or down. It's extremely handy. When you hold shift, you can press the up or down arrows to move up or down by half steps, or you can press left or right arrow to change which beat you're on. This also works for whenever you select a certain set of notes. When holding control, you can press the up or down arrows to move your notes up or down by an octave. So I'm just going to run over to the other pattern again, set this up a bit. So basically, when you press Control L, it will just connect all the notes like this. For this shortcut, we need multiple notes to be selected, and this arrow will appear. It allows us to stretch and shrink our notes without snap. If you want it with snap, just hold Alt, and we can stretch and shrink it like that. If you want to select multiple individual notes, you have to hold Control and Shift, and you're able to do this. If you just hold Control, you can't do that. It'll reset every time you click. When you double click a pattern that has multiple instruments being played, the first piano roll that pops up will be the one of the highest channel in the channel rack. If we look up here, this is called our target channel, and when we left click it, a drop down of all the other channels pops up, and it allows us to switch between channels like that. If you double right click on these grayed out notes, you'll go to the instruments that's playing those notes. So we're back in the bass line now. We can also scroll on our target channel to switch between instruments quickly. If we right click our target channel, it will pull up the generator that was used to make the sound. So in this case, Citrus. Because it's me, you know. And those are all the shortcuts I have for the piano roll. If you want to learn more, as usual, click in this arrow in the top left corner of the window and learn from all these drop down menus. Because there's a lot I didn't go over because I don't use them, but it can work for you. Or equivalently, just press F3. Same old menu. So now let's get into the mixer. And the mixer is where we do our mixing, our mastering, routing, post-processing, etc. To send a channel to a mixer track, make sure you select the channel you want, and then you just select whatever mixer track you want, and you just press Control L. To send multiple channels to a mixer track, just select your channels, pick your mixer track, and press Control L. And the information of the highest channel will be on your mixer track. I gotta clear this out for the next one. Boop, 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 boop. So if you want to send multiple channels to their own individual mixer tracks, you select your channels, pick a mixer track with enough space to the right, and you press Control, Shift, and L, and they all appear there. If you want to select multiple tracks, you can hold Control, click, and drag, but just like in the piano roll, it resets per click. So if you want to stop that, you just hold Control, Shift, click, and drag. And now everything is saved. If you would like to move your selected track or tracks, just hold left Alt and press left or right arrow. And that's how they move. To make it a little bit more clear, I'll just move this one. And that's how that works. If you want to route a track or set of tracks to another track, select your track or tracks and right click the arrow at the bottom of whatever track you want to route to, and we have 4 options. So first off, route means send both the peak and volume information, and sidechain just means send just the peak information. So route to this track just adds to the previously routed track, so in this case, the master. Route to this track only, self-explanatory, and sidechain to this track, as I said before, it only sends the peak information, no volume, and sidechain to this track only, self-explanatory. So I'm just going to reset this now. So let's say there's an effect that I really like in my effects chain, and I want to transfer it to a different mixer track. All I need to do is click on this arrow, click and drag that save preset as into whatever mixer track I want, and it'll be there. So now it's here. And if I like a full chain, so I'm just going to stack this up a little bit. whoops. If I like this full chain, you right click on the mixer track. You go to File, Save Mixer Track State As, and you can click and drag this, and the whole chain will be there. And of course, as I said before, explore this drop down menu. It's really handy. I'm just pressing E to reset all these. Oh, also, I didn't mention this before, but when you have multiple tracks selected, you can change all their volumes simultaneously, or even name them and color them the same thing. Same thing. So that's fun. And you can do that as well. Since we have these LED lights, we can left click to mute and right click to solo, just like in the channel rack. And over in the effect slots, we can actually automate them, just like we can in these. So that's extremely handy. You can move the left and right arrows to navigate your mixer like this. And if you press down, you move to the right by 4. And if you press up, you'll move to the left by 4. And this input won't show up on the input history or keyboard, but if you press home, you'll instantly go to the master. And that's all I have for the mixer section. As usual, if you want to learn more, click on this arrow in the top left corner of the window, or just press F3 while the mixer is active. There's so much to learn from these drop-downs. So now let's get into graph editors. I'm going to move over to a different project for this one. So graph editors are everywhere in FL Studio, so I figured why not go over that workflow as well. In this case, I'll be focusing on the graph editors of automation clips. And if you want to automate anything in FL Studio, you just right click on a parameter or button and you select create automation clip. In this case, I'm not going to do that again because it's already made. So yeah, I'm automating the cutoffs of filter 1, filter 2, and filter 3 in this neural base, and all filters are band stop filters. So here's what it sounds like. So when you start automating something, it usually looks like this. It's just a flat line that goes on and on until the end of either the song or the loop point. To insert a point inside of an automation clip, we just right click inside of it, like so. Oops. That can happen if you click on the title of the automation clip. And that's how we do it basically. After you make a point, you can left click it and move it around freely with snap like this. If you want to move it without snap, you just hold Alt and you're able to do that. When moving a point, we can also hold Shift to lock horizontally and Control to lock vertically. When you right-click an existing point, this drop-down menu appears and we have our underlying shortcuts as usual, and we have our curve options. And the curve just affects the line before the point we click. So for example, like that. I'm just changing the tension of this curve. And to reset our tension, we just right click. If we click on this graph symbol in the top left corner, we can go to articulator tools and do things like flip vertically or copy the whole automation into one another, like that, and so on. Just to be clear, this is consistent throughout every graph editor in FL Studio. So in this Maximus, for example, if I click on this arrow, same options, same workflow. Right click, same options. When I'm done clicking in points with my automations, I always use the slip tool so I can easily do this. And I always use the cut tool so I can easily do this. And then more of this. So for sound design, this works extremely well because I can get this, or this, and so on. So let's see how it works in context. I'm just going to play from here to here. To my surprise, playing this project while recording didn't kill my CPU. I guess it's the new update. Here it is. I almost forgot, an extremely handy shortcut is Control H, which instantly silences any sound. So for example, if I want to stop that, Control H is here to save the day. Those are some shortcuts and workflow tips that have really sped up my production. I didn't go over each and every shortcut in FL Studio because that would make this video even longer than it is now. That's why I went over how to find shortcuts for yourself in the beginning and throughout the video. I'm hoping you find this useful. Comment your favorite shortcuts that are handy for your own workflow. I'd love to see what you have to say. Anyway, if you have any questions, please let me know and have an awesome day.